All right, and welcome to Hat-Trick Sports Talk after what was a wild Bucs Saints game. We have Shane and Brandon in the building as always. How you guys doing today?
Doing well, just hanging out, doing nothing because life.
Yeah, just adding another rung to my anti Tom Brady fan club.
Same.
And then we are joined by the champion of our fantasy football league, Matthew Vo. Welcome in, buddy.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So since we got Matt in here, we are just going to talk about some of our overarching thoughts of our first full season of fantasy football. And then obviously we'll get to the games of the weekend. Matthew, since you're the champ, give me your overarching thoughts. I know this was your first season playing it. For me, when you're doing it your first year, there's a lot of growing pains. There's a lot of things you have to learn and kind of understand. What was your experience in it? Of course, winning your first year is an accomplishment in itself, but what was your experience?
Well, I'm sure some beginner's luck and everything. I didn't have a game plan when it came to drafting. I pretty much just picked people based off of what I had some knowledge of the previous season and went off of that. What else? I think maybe some big takeaways I got from the season is just not sticking with players and thinking I like them so much, and then just keep wanting to keep them on the team and trying to understand just because you like them as a player doesn't necessarily mean you like them as a fantasy football player. Trading, something I wish I would have done sooner and more often. And then
our league was a little rough trading. I think next year that's going to change a lot.
Yeah.
Some of those trades were wild, as we talked about in this show throughout our process. But I have the trader representation now, so I probably need an agent or a lawyer or something because I don't know how I'm going to make trades next year.
Also, COVID and injuries and things derailed a lot of weeks. It's some weeks every team was healthy, and then other weeks it's just you either got lucky breaks or you didn't get lucky breaks and your best players were out. So I don't know. I just felt like there was a huge luck component to it, but having a good bench too, I thought was pretty important too.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it, I would say about a quarter of it, maybe even a third is luck,
Yeah.
just based off of how your one player does any particular Sunday.
Yep.
Or Thursday or Monday, depending on when they play, but so.
Yeah, I spent a good chunk of the season calling my team Death Valley because it seemed like everybody who came onto my team just immediately got hurt. I made a trade with Shane. Shane gave me a pity trade week 4, I think.
Would we call that a pity trade? To be
it was a pity trade at the time, Robert. Let's be honest here. Shane and I literally talked about this, and Shane's like, "Look, you don't have a good quarterback right now."
Okay, Brennan was 0-4. Okay, and I was like, you know what? I feel bad for this man. I have Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, 2 top 5 fantasy quarterbacks. I was like, you know what? Here, you can have Dak Prescott.
Then he goes and friggin' obliterates his.
Literally, the first game Brennan plays him is when his ankle injury.
But you had Deshaun Watson the whole year. You weren't itching for quarterback.
Right. But here's the thing: I had Deshaun Watson. But you forget Deshaun Watson didn't start playing well fantasy wise until about week 6. He was pretty trash fantasy wise for the first couple weeks, and so I was like, oh sweet, Dak Prescott, this will be great. He blows it, and then from that point on, I literally was like, man, I should change my team name to Death Valley or the Valley of Death or something. But the thing is, I maintain that if my team had been healthy for the whole season, I wouldn't have been super good, but I maintain I would have been good enough probably to sneak into the playoffs with my team.
You would have been competitive for sure.
You were competitive. I told you this halfway through the year, and we talked about this on every show. I was like, dang, actually, your team's hard to play. It was a massive stress for me.
Yeah.
So I wrote an article. I need to finish this and publish it for everybody. I wrote an article called Fantasy Football Lessons to Take into 2021.
You told me about this briefly.
Right. So here's my top 5 list. I'm going to try to add more. This is not done. I should have finished it, but it's not done. Number 1, fantasy football is unbearably too variable.
True.
Fantasy football is by far the most frustrating fantasy sport, but it's also so much fun because you have to work hard to fight the variability of it. How many times does the projected RB12 finish the week as RB40? Zeke finished as he was targeted at RB8 most weeks, I guess 4 to 8, and he would finish at RB40. Basically, you will have players that will bust for you. It's normal, but making trades and waiver wire moves are huge. Number 2, and I think this is the biggest consensus from everybody, experts, everybody said this is the most important thing. Waiver wire is the most crucial part of fantasy football. The fantasy football MVP and rookie of the year was my guy, James Robinson. Picked him up halfway through the year, led me to a title. Matthew, you were shaking your head. You kind of had experience with this.
Yeah.
How crucial the waiver wire is.
Extremely crucial. I mean, I was kind of picking last most of the time, so I didn't focus on getting players that I thought people would take, and I chose players further down the list I didn't think people would take. Some good examples. Well, this was the beginning when no one knew, but Robbie Anderson was a good pickup.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hawkinson, like tight ends were pretty much a wash this year unless you had Kittle for the first half, and I guess near the end,
Kelsey dominated.
Kelsey, yeah, and Waller. So everyone else was kind of like, yeah. So I was pretty glad I got to pick up T.J. Hawkinson and also Jonnu Smith in the first couple weeks when he was still playing well. When I think Corey Davis was out.
Yeah.
What else? The last week I picked up Madison. That was probably the thing that saved the championship, because Robert, you were leading me like 16 or 20 points going.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was you just took running backs because you knew that I didn't have an RB2, even though I was pretty comfortable in my RB2.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, that was pretty garbage, but
and
you know,
Doug Peterson
whatever.
benching Jalen Hurts in the third.
Yeah, that I honestly think if that didn't happen, he would have had a good day.
Yeah,
it would have been. I think he probably still would have won, maybe, but like
it would have been really close.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't already close, but yeah.
Number 3, nothing is too difficult to overcome. This is from Matthew Berry. So you had guys like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, even Dak, guys that just were hurt. I mean, I made the title with Christian McCaffrey only playing 3 weeks, and it makes fantasy football harder. When you have big time injuries, you got to work even harder to find a way to get the title. Deeply at projections, rankings, all of this stuff. Number 4, ADP battle. This is something that when we were off air talking about your team, Matthew, that I think you did exponentially well. And this is something that Paul and I talked about earlier this week in fantasy basketball. It's super important in any fantasy league. Drafting to sort of beat average draft position. Diggs is a perfect example, Shane. You drafted him, he was ranked, 50, 60 ADP? He finished as wide receiver 4. Matthew, you did that with your entire team. Antonio Gibson later in the 12th round. And Paul made a great point for fantasy basketball stuff that we did, but this is even important for fantasy football. Beating an ADP or getting a guy at a low ADP that completely outperforms it is in a lot of ways the key to winning in any fantasy sport. And then number 5, as Matthew said, having a good bench is more important than you think. In my other league, I just didn't have a bench the whole year. It is rough when you don't have a bench that can support you in situations. It's tough because some guys like Antonio Brown didn't have many value for most of the year, and then sometimes they pop off, so you're going to keep them on the roster, plus it's like roster percentage. So it's tough. Yeah. What do you guys think of that top 5 list? I know there was more that I didn't add, but what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think it's a pretty solid top 5 for fantasy. I mean, what you were saying about there's nothing too hard to overcome. I mean, I would make the argument that if you're playing in a 10-man league for us, and you're having just injuries left and right, that's going to be a little bit different. Like if you're having literally injuries on 3 of your main right. players right off the bat. I mean, I literally played. The only reason I picked up the running back for Tampa Bay was because
Ronald
Eckler,
Jones.
I picked up Ronald Jones because Eckler went down week 2, I think week 3. And I was like, well, shit. And that
Right.
was just it was just one of those things where it was really it was really sort of difficult to overcome, because I had built my team in a way specifically where I had decided, you know what, my team is going to be very open to being screwed over by injury, but if it stays healthy, it's going to provide me with the pieces that I need. Because I've done fantasy football in the past, and I know players that tend to like go under the radar. Didn't really work out for me this year. But
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what I would have done if Travis Kelce had gotten hurt. I think I would have actually lost my mind.
Yeah, it was super funny. I think in this league more than many other. I mean, I've only done fantasy football for about 2 years. It was funny, like the way trading worked, because it felt like almost everyone was available, right? And it was sometimes hard. It's still like, I think one of the most difficult things with trading is like gauging fair, sort of semi-fairness value, right? Because there were certain cases where trades would get vetoed and things like that, understandably so. But sometimes that is really difficult to gauge. It's sort of a yin and yang proposition where it's like, okay, where do I have a need and where can I help someone else out with their needs? But that process can sometimes be really difficult. So it's just kind of figuring out. I think next year, especially in our league, at least, the trades are going to get even harder to do, as well as have like more commissioners, more people watching the league closely. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about as well. Of course, I picked up Darren Waller halfway through the year for Keenan Allen. I clearly at that time lost that trade. It's funny how that sort of ended up. So it is sort of interesting how some trades. I remember I made that Ryan Tannehill deal earlier in the year that we cut all of those players in a matter of 2 weeks. We made a 2-for-2 deal and we cut everybody after 2 weeks. That was in that deal. So it's a funny thing as well.
Or like when you and I traded Michael Thomas and Julio
Julio.
Jones.
Yeah. That trade wasn't bad. I honestly think at the end of the day that was pretty. Like we benefit on certain weeks and we didn't on other weeks. It was kind of strange. I don't know.
Well, they both ended up not playing majority of the time, and then we both ended up losing the league. So
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what did it do?
Mhm. So I know. With you, Shane, and with you, Brandon, as well. With Matthew's team, what were some of the things that really sort of surprised you with his team? Because I know his team was kind of a big topic of conversation. Because Shane, I know that you said he had the best team throughout the entire period of the league.
I said it on draft night that he had the best team and he was going to win, and everybody said I was crazy. So screw all of you. But no, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I mean, it's the thing that I really liked about Matt's team is that he had a lot of not even that like his bench was initially amazing, but just his starters alone had so much depth. Like Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones were two guys that I thought were like both top 5 running backs. Mahomes, top 3 quarterback, and the list goes on.
I think Mahomes finished as QB2 or QB3. I know Kyler finished as QB1.
He did?
Yes, Kyler finished as QB1, even though he had like a rough end of the year.
Interesting. But yeah, anyways, so, I just looked at all that, and it's like there was no other team that had like that level of just dominance on their starters. And I was like, yeah.
Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the team the team as a whole was just balanced pretty well. And I mean, I think Shane, we talked about how like Matthew just was, he kind of, I think we talked about how he reached a lot, but in a good way.
Reached a little,
like,
yeah.
Quote unquote reached. But and I'm a fan of the reach strategy, because I think if you're playing fantasy football, there are no quote unquote manners or rules. If you're in a draft and you see someone, you go, I want this player on my team, you should grab them.
Take them. Yeah.
Take them. Because
I feel like this is where I differ with you guys with this team, because as I said, I think what Matthew did was kind of work the ADP really well, Because
here's the
even
thing,
for
Robert.
a guy like Mahomes, he got him in like the second or third round when he wasn't really projected to go in that area. Like his projection, he got him much later than his projection.
Yeah, but there were multiple times, Robert, where he took players before me, and I went, "Damn it, I wanted him." So it's like it was sort of like taking advantage. Basically, what I'm saying is it's being, instead of being the guy who went, "Oh, I'll take him next round." It's going, "You know what? I'm going to take him now instead of waiting and seeing that if he's still here next round." Because that's how you end up screwing yourself over.
Yeah.
You go, is he going to be still here next time? And because the guy behind you, I guarantee you most of the time is thinking, please don't take him, please don't take him, please don't take him. And then you don't take him and you go, sweet, I'll take him. That's what I was going to do with Patrick Mahomes. I was like,
I was not even going for Mahomes at all.
Dude, I think I even skipped over Patrick Mahomes like a round earlier. I was like, I'll wait for him. And then I think Matthew scooped him up. I was like, well, God damn it.
You scooped him up in the third, which was crazy value.
For fourth, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Maybe fourth, yeah. Let's see. So, Matthew, running backs and tight ends seem like the most valuable positions for 2021 as they are this year?
I would say tight ends number one. It might be a take, but like I think if you can get a solid tight end in like the second round, maybe I wouldn't go the first, but like maybe the second round. If you can get that tight end, you're like one of two or three teams that have it, and your rest of your draft is solid. It'll just put you in a kind of an edge in every situation, just because you're competing in that one spot where it's just not a whole lot of competition to begin with. I don't know if calls are any good, but
I think the only tight end that I would say would be a first round worthy tight end based off of his production this year would be Kelsey.
Does Kelsey have merit as a first round pick? I think he does.
I took him in the first round, and he definitely turned out to be a first round talent.
Right, back into the first. Yeah.
I took him at the very end of the first round, and I was not unhappy with taking him.
I thought you took Eckler in the first round.
No, I took Eckler in the second
round. Second round.
There's no way I was going to take Eckler in the first round.
Oh.
Like, he's a good running. He's a good piece for my team, but like, he's not a guy that anybody's really thinking about.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting because I feel like in some ways, Farley, it's going to be interesting because it's going to happen the same way as last year. Running backs are going to fall off the board like crazy in the first round. And maybe tight ends are going to start falling off the board. So that was one of the interesting things about this league for me was how many running backs went off the board. I ended up with James Conner in the late second round when his ADP probably wasn't even close to that.
Shane, will you be taking a wide receiver in the first round again?
No.
You know what? I'll say this: if the Packers do not get a number one receiver in the draft or anything, maybe Allen Robinson goes there. He's a free agent. I think Devontae Adams has a legit case to go in the first round.
Still not doing it.
I don't think I'm doing it, but I still think his ADP should be in the first round. I don't know if he'll go there.
I would take him like if I had a pick, like a high pick in the second round, I'd take him with my pick in the second round. But I don't think I would take a wide. I'm never ever going to take a wide receiver in first round because I think first rounds should really just be tight end and running back, like the position.
Mostly running back. Mostly.
Yeah, and if running back runs out, then
take a tight end and figure it out.
There's only I think of the first round as like the game-changing positions. Like the positions are going to give you big points every week.
It's not even just that, because quarterback gives you big points. It's where is the least depth. Yeah. Running back has no back-end depth. Tight end has no depth at all.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. No, let's just put it this way. Okay. For my first pick, I was going to take either Michael Thomas or Derrick Henry.
Sorry, Shane.
Played yourself.
No, you're good. You're fine. So, of course, I was like, oh, Michael Thomas, obviously, he set the NFL record for most receptions last year. Well, look how that turned out for me.
He gets injured, and then you trade him to me.
You know what is kind of funny about that is
Yeah.
I was upset when you took Michael Thomas, Shane. I wanted Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
Because I'd had Michael Thomas the year before, and he just destroyed. I had the pair of Michael Thomas and Drew Brees together in fantasy, and they just killed it.
Drew
Every
Brees
week.
was on my bench most of the year last year.
It was amazing.
The only thing I will say is like the only true miss for me. Well, Antonio Gibson in the back end, I don't think anyone predicted that. The only true miss for me actually probably was Devontae, because I should have thought ahead, and because I had the thought in my head during the draft. I was like, oh, he's their only receiver. He's going to go off.
Yeah.
That one was a crucial miss, but he was injured the first 3 weeks of the year. I know David talked about that, but he went off for him on his team.
Who did you take instead of him?
I think I might have taken a running back over him. I don't remember who I did, but I probably did.
Connor?
Probably it was Connor, because the depth at running back was ugly by that point. But I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, which is why I had to stick with Raheem Mostert for my RB2. God.
Yikes.
Dude, your
I
team
told
was
you
like
it was bad.
patchwork by the end. It was just like sewed together.
I mean, Raheem Mostert, when he was healthy in the beginning of the year, he was great. He was getting
First 7 weeks, he was an
30
RB
points
10
Yeah.
to 15. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
By the way,
And
here's some interesting news that's
what?
just popped up on timeline. Chargers are hiring Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley as their next head coach.
Yeah, Detroit also made a
Means-
hire. We'll get to that in a few.
Which means both of the best defensive coaches are now out of the NFC West from the Rams and the
Hey.
leaving the Seahawks as the dominant defensive force.
Matthew, you had the Seahawks for the point where their schedule was crap.
Yeah,
At the end of the year.
that defensive start was risky, but I'm glad I went with it because everything else I was trying throughout the season was bad. I think Shane was trying to you're trying to sell me the Patriots defensively.
Yeah.
Was I?
They finished okay. Shane,
Yeah.
speaking of trading, I think biggest regret for you has to be sort of your patchwork running back situation at the back end of the year. Wouldn't you say that was?
Yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. when you're well, okay. I got David Montgomery, which was great.
I got Darren Waller out of that
I
deal
got-
in the end.
Oh yeah,
I literally got
Oh,
Darren
man.
Waller instead of him,
I traded Keenan Allen to you.
and then I traded
As a
Keenan
result.
Allen away the next week.
I just
Yeah.
remember I started out the season with the Bills defense, and I thought I was like so excited. I was like, hell yeah! Like
I had
was-
the Steelers
was-
the whole year.
I was pissed when you took him.
I was like, it's gonna be
want-
great. And then ironically, I was like, by like week 3, I was like, I had a conversation with Robert. I was like, screw this. So I was like, Robert's like, dude, just pick up a new defense. I'm like, who am I gonna get? I'm like, fine, I'll just take
Miami.
I'll take Miami. Ironically, best move I made this entire year. That defense
Killed it.
was pretty great for me.
Yeah, they were nuts. I was shocked. I had to stream defense like crazy. Actually, before you go, Matthew, I'll let you have the final word. Brandon, two thoughts for your team as well. So you kind of didn't use the waiver wire until the back end of the year when it got a little bit light, but also this is your first time playing PPR, correct?
Yes.
How did you feel about sort of how you used the waiver wire this year, and also like the difference between PPR and non-PPR and some of that strategy?
I think one of my problems was I'm so used. So like as Robert said, I'm so used to playing like standard, that you get more points off of the bigger players. Get you the bigger points. Like the players that stand out, that are the bigger stars when you're playing standard, are the ones that you want to look for.
I would say non-PPR. I think standard's half PPR.
Yeah.
mostly,
So
but either way.
non PPR. You want the guys who are like standing out, who are going to be always touching the ball. Because, like, well, of course you want that in PPR as well, but it doesn't. You basically are looking more for the touchdowns rather than the catches, in like regular. So for me, I think one of the things that kind of made it rougher for me is I was having to adjust to the idea of getting the ball in the player's hands, like, as much as on your team. So I think as the season went on and as it got more towards the end and I started using the waiver wire more, I was able to pick up. I did more of picking up players for just 1 week and using them and then dropping them.
So you did a little bit of streaming, like we're doing.
Yeah, I did more streaming towards the end, which I think is a more efficient use for PPR than in non PPR. Mm-hmm. And then I guess the other thing about the team is just like I mean, I'll be honest. The reason I didn't do much in the middle of the year is because I kind of just shut it down in the middle of the season. Like I got to a point where I was like, I'm done. I'm not gonna, like, I was mentally just kind of over it because my team was so injured at one point. Like, there was literally a week where I, like, looked at my team and I was like, I think I might have had a conversation with you, Robert, just like, what the fuck is the point of playing this week? Just like every good player on my team is hurt, especially when you look at the standings and it's like 6 players all tied with the same record, and then there's me.
We're eliminating divisions next year because of that crap. Yeah. We're getting rid of it. It was so bad.
It was literally like everybody was tied at one point, and then it was like me and Connor just like, okay.
Yeah. And there's me in the NFC East with my, me having a worse record than like 4 of you, and I'm still in first place.
Yeah. So
yeah, we're getting rid of divisions. I think, we're not doing that again. No way.
I think next season I'll have a better idea of how to PPR, and hopefully next season can be a revenge season. So
we're gonna do some interesting things with structure, but we'll get to that once we hit July. So I of course made the title game against Matthew. I'm really proud of that second place because that took a ton of work. That took hours of work, because it was like, all right, I need to look at values, I need to look at this and that. Because my original team was garbage. I would have had 4 wins with that original team. I am certain. I mean, it took me
you
so
were
much
like
work.
3-2 with them.
Yeah. And I was like, no, this ain't enough. I can't. And like Matthew was my measuring stick halfway through the year. I was like, oh my God, I need to figure out how to beat his team. So I was scrambling the whole year trying to figure it out. It was tough. It was really tough. But Matthew, I'll give you the last word. Excited for 2022. What are you kind of going to go with the same strategy? What are some things you're looking to change, even though you won the title?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts actually. First of all, Robert, I'd say I'd probably compare it against your team the most. Like, I think when I was looking at people's teams, I kept either visiting yours or I forgot which of the brothers it was the Matty Ice Cubes. I think it might have changed.
David.
The beginning, super good with like Lockett and I think also Devontae Adams at the same time because it's just like spiking each week.
Yeah, they do, like there were some fun things with Lockett where he had spiked and then went down, so it was really interesting.
Yeah, I think my strategy going into next year, one thing I stopped doing after the first half is I kept trying to put in players that I thought they performed well for me in the past, and so I'm going to play them now, even though they've been doing bad. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I know there's like a luck component to it, but I think if there's a matchup that's coming up where you're not entirely sure you're going to win or your win percentage is so low, maybe it's just best to try to spike players. That's what I did in that final round against you, Robert, when you're like 20 points ahead, but my running back 3, I think, because Gibson and Cam
Akers. The flex spot, yeah.
Yeah, so I had to pick someone. I could have gone with Gibson, who had the toe turf injury, was coming back from it, or I could just take a chance with Madison and do that stacking method with Kirk Cousins, which is something I want to explore next year with stacking like a quarterback.
Stacking as a whole is really interesting. It's such an interesting way to do it. It also depends on your playing too. Like sometimes people like if you play an opponent who has Tampa Bay or like the defense or whatever that the opponent's playing, you just play the quarterback or whatever. So sometimes there's some weird mix and matching with that too. But it's also kind of gaming the system in some way as well.
Yeah, I think what it does, like it lowers your floor, but it raises your ceiling or something for how many points you can get each week if the touch equity is the same for both. So that's something I really want to play with. I think just drafting in general, I didn't have a mindset. If you remember from draft day, I think I was asking you questions during the live stream.
Yeah, you guys, you were on our stream with us for most of the time, and once in a while you're like, who do you need to take here and here?
Yeah.
But even so, you still kind of you still use that. Like I think we'll only ask one time, like what's most important, running back, like what's a flex thing, or all this stuff. But those small keys kind of still you push yourself in a direction where you built a good team.
Yeah, it honestly, most of it was off of name value. I think the two things I came in with drafting, I don't want to draft people who are injury prone. And forgot what the second was.
You didn't want to draft anyone who's injury prone, yet you drafted Derrick Henry?
Yeah.
That's
was he injury prone? Okay, I didn't know that. And that's the second thing. Okay, I remember now. I did not have a whole lot of football knowledge. I was like a casual viewer when I'd watch the Hawks, and then after that, I'd kind of like watch a game here and then when I had some free time. But this season, it's like every game I was watching to a certain extent to try to figure out what's going on. And I think like my overall knowledge of players has increased drastically. So I'm hopeful I can bring that into next time, but not overthink it, because overthinking can also produce negative results.
Yeah, it depends. I overthink a lot, but I take the risk of positive and negative. Yeah, the main thing with fantasy too is like I know Brandon and I are playing fantasy hockey right now and all stuff. I don't have too much knowledge on that, or as much knowledge on that as I do the other sports. Sometimes it's also just about statistics. Like even if you don't follow the game much or watch all the games, sometimes it's about like stats and like trying to figure it out. So something that like fantasy is a great way to get people in more to any sport really, because it's more about thinking, especially if you're a stat guy. I mean, I become more of a stat guy with fantasy, but it is more about like just sort of thinking in that realm too. It challenges your brain to think in that realm, as well as kind of expand your overall knowledge.
For sure. Yeah. The knowledge part and like thinking about not if a team is good, but like if it's a trashy team, but they have like one or two players that end up getting a lot of points, then maybe drafting them is the right move, or just thinking like that. But it's definitely a different way to think about football, but it's been really enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you had you in. Congratulations on the win.
Matthew into a football nerd now.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit.
Hey. That's the fun part about it. Well, congrats on the win, Matthew. Hopefully we'll rematch. Well, we will rematch again next year. I know everyone's gonna be going for you and for me, being the two guys in the title game. So it's gonna be a challenge next year, but we're excited to get back to it.
Sounds good.
All right. See you, Matthew. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yep. Have a good night.
See ya. All right. All right. Shane, I'm gonna let you have the floor. Drew Brees. With his retirement. I know he's like your favorite quarterback of all time. As reported by Jay Glazer, it seems like he will retire as it stands. Give me sort of your overall career of Drew Brees, with him going to Chargers, getting traded and all that stuff. So kind of give us your whole career thought. You're the perfect guy to kind of give a wrap on his career for us.
It's weird. I'll always remember the last we see of a particular player in their sport, the very last game, the very end of it, whether it's good or bad. One that comes to mind a lot is Kobe, especially after he passed. Just his last game, he was just so dominant, and
he shot the ball too much. I'll say that.
Well, yeah, but still, it was classic Kobe. He got 60 points and got the win. It was just, it was fun.
Love Kobe, of course. He's on my wall right here.
Yep. And then you have guys like Brees, who for their last game does not go very well. He threw, 3 picks. His last throw actually was an interception. And that's just kind of, despite how good his career was, I feel like that's always going to kind of leave a sour taste in people's mouth, knowing that that's how he ended, or at least for him, I'd imagine. But, he had an interesting career, though. I mean, in San Diego, feels weird to call them San Diego now, but in the San Diego Chargers, he, going from thinking he might not ever play again, and then going to New Orleans in the midst of their Hurricane Katrina recovery effort, and going there, winning that title, and then even in that whole time when their team was bad, he still was loyal to them, and he still loved the team and the city, and he still put up insane numbers. Some of the best in the league, and I was just really hoping, after all that, after everything he did for that city, I was hoping he could just get one more ring in any of these 4 years when this team was playing really well recently.
So close, but yet so far it felt like for the last 4 years of his career.
Yeah.
But you have to ask the question though: were they really close? Because I never felt like, okay, maybe they were close when they played the Rams and they got screwed out of.
Even the year after that too.
But that was it. That was their chance. They should have been in the Super Bowl then, and I felt like it was a downward spiral from that point on.
Yeah.
To be frank, nothing this season has really impressed me about the Saints. I felt like the Saints had the same accommodations as the Green Bay Packers have, which is they are in a shitty-ass division with shitty-ass
better
team.
This year, it seemed like.
Okay, better.
NFC South wasn't that bad.
NFC South, it's still pretty. There's 2 teams that are decent. The Saints,
Atlanta we'll get
and
to
the
later.
Buccaneers. Otherwise, don't talk
Atlanta
to me
we'll get
about
to later.
NFC South.
We'll get to later.
NFC,
we'll get to
and then
later.
the NFC Central or whatever it's called.
North. It feels like the Central.
I always want to call it the Central.
The Midwest.
Just because it's like the NFC.
Literally, Midwest.
In my mind,
That's what it is. Really.
In my mind, I just see NFC Midwest. I know it's funny. I'm in basketball mode. I'm like,
yeah, we are all in basketball mode right now.
But basically, it's like, it's one of the reasons I have such a hard, and I've realized it. It's one of the reasons I have such a hard time giving Aaron Rodgers his props, is because he's been in this terrible, terrible division in which they've literally.
Oh, the North is probably one of the worst divisions.
They've just the Packers have just munched on these 3 terrible teams for years, and he's hardly had to do anything. I mean, but that's a separate another. We can do that. After
we will get to that for sure.
Here's my thing, right? The Saints, if they were truly serious about making that push for the final, to give Brees one more shot at glory in the Super Bowl, even to put him in the Super Bowl one more time, they would have gone out in free agency and they would have brought in some pieces
or use some trade pieces. Yeah,
they would have stacked that wide receiver pieces. They would have stacked that line. They would have stacked the defense and not to say the defense wasn't bad, but here's the difference. You know what the Patriots did every time they wanted to win the Super Bowl again? They literally went out and they were like, all right, Tom Brady, we're going to give you what you need.
Not really. I wouldn't say that was the case.
No.
Absolutely not. They didn't give him anything.
It wasn't a lot of pieces, though. It was always one guy who made a big impact.
See, I will say
Randy Moss, or
guy.
it was a Randy Moss, or it was a guy on the defense who could really pop off and do the thing. The thing is, the difference is they got one guy. They got a piece. They got someone. They showed him, hey, we're bringing people in.
Someone.
But in this case, I would argue like the Saints have just kind of been stagnant for a while. They just haven't done much. To
you
really
have to
show me.
So you have to say a couple of things here. One, you can make an argument that Davenport hasn't developed to that top 10 pick that he was. You can also say that draft class with Lattimore is one of the greatest draft classes in NFL history from an individual team. It is. Also, another thing is that cap situation they had. I think they were -15, -20 in the offseason.
They were bad. It was bad.
It was bad. They couldn't really do as much as they would have hoped. And that's part of it too. So there's a lot of reasons for it. I think overall, I think that the thing with the Saints is like, I think with them and even with the Packers to some degree, we're always kind of taking them for granted because we know they're going to be there at the end or in the playoffs, especially the Saints last 4 years. Yeah, I think these last 4 years put a bad taste in my mouth as an NFL fan. If I was a Saints fan, even more, because even the Rams thing as well. But I think last year there was another one that was like, it's rough because if there was any time for Brees to win one more, this was it. Like,
and also
were it, and that's what makes it more disheartening just as a football fan.
Also, the last thing I'll say about the Saints is, frankly, I don't think Sean Payton is that good of a coach.
I think he's a top 5. I honestly think he's
I would disagree with.
coach.
I would disagree. With that.
I'm with Robert.
He doesn't do. I think he's a coach who's had great coordinators.
He does the play calling
coached well, and
he does the play calling.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but it's the same sort of scenario going on where I feel with the Green Bay and the Saints, and it's the
Matt LaFleur. Definitely
LaFleur. Ironically, I have more respect for LaFleur than I ever had for McCarthy. I thought McCarthy was not.
I'm kind of with you there. I like LaFleur a lot.
I don't know. I also I'm still very sour on Peyton for the fact that he stood by and let the Bounty Gate thing happen.
Yeah, the Bounty Gate thing is
that thing
legacy
will forever
terrible.
Stain his legacy
right.
for me.
No, I agree.
And I admit maybe it's very possible that that clouds my judgment on him.
And honestly, that's fair.
Every time I look at him, I just think Bounty Gate, and I think this guy is an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. So here's my thing though. I mean, with Peyton, I think Shane, you can probably say this more than I can, but it's not just his relationship with Brees that I loved over the past decade or more. And let's be honest, there were moments in his career. I mean, remember, what was it? Andrew Luck was on the Colts, and there were rumors that one off season that he would be getting traded to the Colts. There were moments. There was a period of 2 seasons. What was it? 14 and 15, something like that, where yeah, it didn't seem like he was going to last long there. And maybe you can make an argument that a change of scenery would have benefited Sean Payton, especially maybe Andrew Luck would have been a good spot. Of course, we know that kind of turned out with Luck. But I think the one thing with me that has always impressed me about Payton, of course, he's still got a long way to go, probably with Taysom Hill at this point, is the play calling. It is amazing how well they communicate and how well he disguises plays. We saw it today with the Jameis Winston play. It's crazy. But I'm sure you can speak more on why Peyton is in the Hall of Fame already, as is Brees, of course.
I mean, my thing with Sean Payton is that he is the reason I think he's good. And again, I'm with you, Brandon. I don't love the guy because of Bounty Gate and all that. But as a football mind, I mean, he's very adaptable and he is very creative. I mean, we've seen multiple times in the past couple of years where Brees is out or so-and-so's out and he's like, yeah, okay, no problem. And then he comes up with some whole giant other scheme that just works. And you're like, oh, okay,
Taysom Hill this year is a perfect example.
Right. Or when Kamara was out they had two or three of their running backs were out.
Yeah, and Ty Montgomery ran for 100 yards.
Yeah. And then Teddy Bridgewater last year, going 5-0 with him. It's just stuff like that, So
yeah, I personally, and I think next year, I actually am. Today kind of made me think. I don't know if he's really fully committed to Taysom Hill being the starter.
Because Taysom Hill was inactive today, so it's not a great.
Well, I don't know. Jameis looks pretty good under Peyton.
I will say that he'll be nice under Peyton.
I think we could see an interesting QB battle because I think there will be a QB battle. That is not just going to be Taysom Hill's job.
Keep in mind that Winston's on a 1-year deal. I don't know how many other teams are interested in him. I would not be surprised if other teams go after him.
Yeah, I also think that Sean Payton has said that he's made it clear. Maybe he hasn't specifically said it, like straight up said the words, "I want him around more," but he's made it pretty clear that he wants Jameis Winston on the team, like re-signed on the team. Yeah. But one interesting thing that I wanted to talk about is the conversation of the difference between Hall of Famer and legend, because people are calling Drew Brees a legend, and Paul Gallant from 710 actually put out an interesting tweet where he said, Brees is a Hall of Fame QB. Legend, meh. Stinks to go out like this, but we've seen hints of this at the end of the year for 3 straight seasons. You people throw that word around to the point it has little meaning. If Brees is legendary, so are Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Russell Wilson, all who have made more Super Bowls than Brees just in that era.
Well, okay, I would say that it's not just about the statistics. He's played 20 years. Brady's played 21 years. It's not just about stats. If you're talking about legend here, let's not even talk about QB. Let's talk about coaches like Bill Belichick, who have lasted the test of time in New England. When you're talking about legend, it's not only about what you've done in the league from a statistical perspective, including Super Bowls. The fact that the guy lasted 20 years at 40, and I know we're going to see it more.
But he didn't do it. But here's the thing, Robert. Sorry, and I'm sorry to interrupt you here.
No problem.
Like, for me, and I'm sure we have different ideas of concepts of what legend should mean in the NFL.
Right, and I think it's hard too. But I think what you're saying makes it extremely hard because there are certain guys that honestly, let's be honest, Brady and Brees are just going to have that legend tag attached to them. That's just what it is. It's hard to
Brees just because he's played 20 years, just because he managed to his body managed to hold up for 20 years. If that should mean legend, if when you won one Super Bowl and you made it to a couple NFC championships. Right. But I can also say that I already say in my mind, I already know down the line that people are going to be calling Russell Wilson a Seahawks legend. Because
I would even say an NFL legend. Can I also add this point to this as well? I want to add. But I would
just before you go on to your point, would you, if I would actually say, I would be on the side of saying Brees for what for playing 20 years, I do believe that is a caveat enough to be legendary. However, I also believe with what Paul Gallant has said that if Brees is legendary, then so are players like Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Russell Wilson.
We're missing We're missing the most important point. I cannot believe I said this earlier. This is the most important point as to why Drew Brees deserves to be in that legendary category. Brady, I guess you can't necessarily make this argument. You can. It's a little bit tougher, but with Brees, you can certainly make the argument. Drew Brees changed the quarterback position and changed the NFL forever. He did.
Oh, wasn't Brees the first small guy, sort of?
He was 6 foot. He came out in the league and he played 20 years at 6 foot, and he single-handedly paved the way. Russell Wilson has said this, that Drew Brees was my idol because of his height. Sometimes it's not only what you do on the field, but it's also if you want to attach the legend tag, it's what have you done for the game.
Right.
But like, what is your historical significance of the game? When people talk about you as a player, what is it? For Brees, it might not be about the Super Bowls. It might not be about the statistics. Honestly, the longevity argument probably won't be a great argument in 20 years.
Right.
It definitely won't be a great argument in 20 years. These guys are going to last till 50 at some point.
Yeah. There'll be medicine and whatnot.
Yeah, let's be honest. The real argument for Brees would be he changed the way we look at small quarterbacks. And
right.
I mean, maybe not at the beginning of his career, but definitely towards the tail end.
And I think
that's where it is. I think that's where it is.
With him, it'll be the same. So it's like the same sort of thing where it's like he came in at 6 foot and he kind of brought the height difference down. And then because of that, you had guys like Russell who was able to come in.
And again, that was done more towards the end of his career.
Right.
That was
and
more
Russell,
towards the end.
And Russell then comes in and does his own quote unquote legendary thing by being an even smaller quarterback and doing his thing and going to 2 Super Bowls. And honestly, in a way, I'm starting to wonder if Russell his career might look similar to Brees's in that he's always fighting. Like, he has really good teams and he's a really good player and he has really good stats and really good numbers and all this stuff, and he goes to divisional games and championships and yada yada yada, but he's never quite able to do it one last time.
But yeah, so I think the true legendary argument is his impact to the game. Shane, what is your ultimate thought on if Brees deserves that legendary tag?
I think he does. I think he's a top 5 quarterback all time, because for me, I mean, like you said, the height thing, and also Super Bowl rings aside, because I mean, at the end of the day, that is a team effort. But if you just look at him individually as a player, he holds records, career highs for like half the major stat categories.
Touchdown passes shifts between Brady and Brees every year. It seems like.
Right. Yeah,
and then Brady's
passing yards, career completion percentage. Brees holds all that, and like most pass yards in a season, Brees broke his own record like 4 times.
And I just want to make it clear that I don't put Super Bowl rings as a caveat for like Hall of Famer.
That's why do you think Eli Manning will make the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I do think he will make the Hall of Fame.
That is a tighter argument.
See, that's a case where he'll make the Hall of Fame just because he has 2 rings and just because he beat the Patriots twice.
I'll make a real argument too.
His last name is Manning.
Yeah.
I'll make a real argument too that everybody in that 2004 draft class the quarterback position should. Rivers should.
But that's the thing. Like for me, like that is the main. Like, I've always been a guy who believes that Phillip Rivers should be a Hall of Famer. And there are people who are like, oh, he's not a Hall of Famer. Well, the thing is, if you look at like and that's when you really look at what he's done as a player. I mean, for so long, it was him and it was Antonio Gates. For so long, it was him and Antonio Gates with the and Tomlinson. It was those 3. Those were the only 3 players that the Chargers had for so long.
I remember that one season in 2011 where Rivers threw like an intense amount of picks. Yeah. And the next year he just rebounded. Also, just a report that came out, Brees is taking some time, so he's not officially announcing his retirement yet. So all of this is still kind of coming out and unfolding. Yeah. But obviously
he apparently has a nuts contract though on the table waiting for him
at NBC. He's gonna be fun at NBC. Shane, any sort of last words on? Or actually, before I finish with you on the last words, Brandon, like your overall thoughts on Brees' career, your perspective as a fan, because that's something we didn't get to.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of football, and I think our generation, people who have grown up through like 2000s and like especially like the 2010s, when I'm like 50, I will always look back at the 2010s and think about like that's, or even like the I would say it's like the 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012 era, pre-Russell coming into, like the 2013 draft coming into the league. the battles that would go down between Rodgers and Brees and Brady and those quarterbacks was
Big Ben
so
when he was good.
Big Ben. It was so prolific.
Peyton Manning too, towards
Right.
even in Denver was
Giants
fun.
and the Steelers and the Packers and even the Eagles with Donovan McNabb.
Yeah. You guys remember Kevin Cobb?
Yeah. You had these prolific battles between teams that are sadly kind of mid-tier now. Some of them are still really good, like the Packers and the Saints.
Even the perspective on some of those teams has changed. Look at the Steelers.
Right, and it's like I just think about as a football fan, like watching those teams battle it out on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football is what really got me into football. So even if I don't, at the end of the day, put Brees like at the top of my pedestal, I will always have an enormous amount of respect for the man. I think he's had an amazing career. I think he stat wise, it says it all. He got his ring, which is great. It's what every player wants. He's been to numerous championships. He's played in the brightest of lights. He's played with some of the greatest players to play the game. He showed what type of person he was during the Hurricane Katrina. I mean, at the end of the day, as you say, like it's what you do off the field, and like just thinking about Hurricane Katrina and all the work he did to help out there. I mean,
yeah, he's gonna be New Orleans lore forever.
Yeah,
well deserved.
And it does ask the one thing I was thinking about during the game is like it doesn't even have to do with Brees is like I wonder how long it'll be before the Superdome gets renovated because that place must be like super kind of old fashioned by now.
Yeah, it's I still want to go see it. It's amazing. Yeah. So for me, unfortunately, I feel like this is sort of like my childhood era of football.
Yeah.
Brees, Brady, Peyton Manning, even Eli too. I love those Peyton Eli battles. Once Brady retires, it's a new era. And we're already sort of seeing it, of course, the early stages of it. But this is one of the greatest eras of football. And in some ways, I think ultimately it does start with Brady just because his legacy is already done in certain respects and could be continuing. But Brees, the one thing I loved about him more than anything was his accuracy. I've never seen someone throw the ball as well as he does. I'll miss having him in the game. I'm excited to have him in the booth. Him and Mike Tirico, hopefully for the next 20 years on Sunday Night Football. And whenever that comes, whenever Alan Chris decide to hang it up and we got Tirico and Brees for the next 20 years, I'm hopeful that's the case because that will be one of the best crews we'll have. I'm hopeful that is the case.
I'm trying to imagine what Sunday Night Football will look like in 2020, in 2040.
Well, I don't know 24. I would say by 2030, it's gonna be Tirico, Brees, and then Catherine Tappan on the sidelines.
I think that robots, cybernetic Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. Tirico, Brees, and Tappan on the sideline will be an incredible crew.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see Brees on the NBC set whenever that comes. And it would be a great next chapter to his career as well. So that's from my overall thought. Shane, you finish this conversation up?
Wow. Getting emotional. No, I mean, I think you kind of nailed what I was going to say about like my childhood era of football. And I feel like that really ended tonight for me, if that was his last game. I feel like that really kind of ended tonight for me because, Brees, as I said, he's like my favorite quarterback ever. But the reason for that is because the very first NFL game I ever watched was his Super Bowl. And
Oh wait, 09. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
yeah,
Really? I started
was-
watching football in heavily in 08. I started in
Yeah.
06, I think, but I became heavily in 08, the year
Mhm.
after that Kurt Warner Super Bowl that we watched actually for their
yeah,
one of their
that was
watch-alongs.
that was the first NFL game I ever watched, and I just remember not really caring about either team, but I'd like never heard of this. Like, I was like, who's this Brees guy? You know, and then here he is making this comeback, and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty good. I like this guy, you know, and that was my introduction to football, you know,
Dang.
and so then now I'm just sitting here tonight watching him. It's like, you know, because my football life began with him, and now here he is retiring, most likely.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like the end of my kind of, you know, childhood era officially.
No.
Or at least it feels like it to me. And it's just weird, you know.
Yeah.
And
That
to think
that 09 season is incredible
yeah.
because the Colts and the Saints were, geez, I think by week 12 or week 13 that year, they were both 12-1 that year, I think, by that point. Or like 11-0, 12-1. They were clearly the two best teams in football throughout that whole year.
Mhm.
Yeah, dang.
So yeah, that's kind of what, you know, what he means to me. You know, when I look back on this, like Brennan said, when I'm, you know, 50 years old, God willing, I'm alive, then I'll always, you know, I'll always kind of look back on this era of football, and he'll probably always be like the first guy that comes to mind for me, you know, or one of the first. So, yeah, it's very weird for me, but the show must go on, you know.
Yep.
They don't last forever, unfortunately.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll
Thanks
see
for
if
the
we'll have
memories,
this
Drew.
conversation again next year,
year.
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Let's actually get to this game in particular. Brandon, I'll start with you with the Bucs because this is something that we kind of talk about off air a little bit. Weeks what? Maybe 15 to now. They felt like a different Bucs team, but I think we all agree that the key to this game wasn't Brady. You talk about the run game, but the big key was that defense and those 4 turnovers that they ended up with to clinch that win tonight.
Yeah, I really, I mean, I said it off air. That is not a Brady win. That is not
No,
a Brady win. That
I
is not
wouldn't say
Tom
so.
Brady. Tom Brady doesn't get any credit for that. Tom
Well,
Brady
I will say Brady
doesn't get
played
to-
good. He played
doesn't-
good, but
he-
still.
Yeah, he was fine.
He was fine.
He was fine.
He doesn't get to take any credit for it. It was really the running game and the defense won that game for them. I've said it, like, I halfway through that game, I was like, man, I feel like the Saints are gonna get this. And to the Buccaneers defense's credit, they haven't exactly been tremendous this season, but they stepped up and they won it. You know, I will also say, the Saints allowed Tom Brady to score on a QB dive from 3 yards
3-yard line.
3 yards out.
Yeah.
Nah. No one. I literally saw that. I was like,
what
who
was
lets Tom Brady score from 3 yards out on a QB dive?
Yeah.
He's usually scoring on like a half-inch dive. So I was like, okay. When that happened, I was like, okay, this game's over. Just no.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think this year has shown us, at least me, just how crucial the turnover battle is.
Yeah.
There have been so many games, and maybe I'm crazy, this has happened all the time, but it seems like this year more than ever. Slurring my speech. I'm not drunk, I swear. It seems like this year more than ever, there have been so many games where no matter how good a team was doing, they would have like 3 or 4 more turnovers than their opponent, and they would lose because of the turnover game, even if they had more yards, better time of possession, whatever. So that's a big thing, and I think that is ultimately why they lost, or why the Bucs won, whichever way you want to word that. Um, so, I think that'll be. I think that'll be a big key for them against Green Bay, who is obviously such a good offense. Obviously, much faster and more explosive than New Orleans. Um, so, you know, if Tampa, I think if they want to shut down this Green Bay defense and keep them in control, the best way to do that is trying to find a way to win that turnover battle. Because I feel like it'll be a really high scoring game. I feel like we'll see 70 total points on the board just between these two offenses.
I cannot wait to see the over under for that game. I wonder if it's already out.
It might be.
It might be already out, but
yeah, because not that Tampa's defense is bad, but I just don't think it's good enough for an offense that's as explosive and just as quick as Green Bay. I mean, hell, they gave up 23 points to the 4th-string Washington quarterback, or whatever his name, Tyler
Heineke. Yeah,
yeah. And I was like, "You're doing that." I don't know. It concerns me for Tampa, but
all right. The betting lines provided by FanDuel here for the NFC title game is, let's see, it is over under 51.5 according to FanDuel right now. 51.5 over under. Over is minus 115. Under is minus 105. So, 15.5 over under right now.
50.
Yeah, 51.5 is the over under according to FanDuel.
Over.
I kind of like, I don't know. I think that's pretty high. Like, I think they're going to score right about 50. So I'll go like a bit under. Brandon, what's your thought on that?
I'll go under.
Yeah, I'm going to go under on that.
You see it being like
I see it legitimately just straight up hitting
24,
50.
21 or
Yeah.
I see it being like 34, 31 maybe.
Yeah, something around there. That's definitely a high one. So this is something I talked about in the offseason with the Bucs, and we've obviously been clearly up and down on them for most of the year, obviously for good reason. We talk about the first half of the season, sort of the primetime game issues and whatnot. But this is something that I talked about as like why the Bucs are Super Bowl contenders. And it was their defense. Last year, they showed flashes of being a top 15 defense. I think I said that they were going to hit top 15. I don't think they did. But definitely look at it now. And that's how they're going to win a Super Bowl this year. Brady's definitely regressed. He's still good, but he's not the same quarterback that he once was. Even with all
like around 10th, QB 10 probably.
Yeah, like he's clearly not what Brady's used to being. And even with all the weapons, they still have to go fast. They still have to rely on the running game. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
They're not going to win a Super Bowl with this offense. They're going to win with this defense, particularly Devin White, who was all over the field today. I love seeing him play. He's so fun to watch because of his speed. His awareness of the field is incredible. Full display today. If they're going to win against the Packers, let alone win a Super Bowl against whoever it is, the Chiefs or the Bills, that defense has to do it. And that's always the case for guys over 40 years old. That's just what it is. Their defense has to step up. Brandon, what are your kind of thoughts on what the Bucs can do to potentially beat the Packers? And obviously you can also switch over to the Packers side, which I know is something you want to discuss.
Oof. What do they have to do to beat the Packers? I think to beat the Packers, they are going to have to play the best. Their offensive line is going to have to play the best that they've played
Mm-hmm.
like this whole season. Like Tom Brady cannot be touched because if he's touched, he's going to get skittish and he's going to become the Tom Brady that we all saw, that we've seen every time he's getting rushed and harassed and hit and knocked down.
Bears game and the first 2 Saints
Right.
games.
And now you could say that they'll be confident coming in because they kicked the crap out of the Packers last time they played them. But it's at Lambeau, and it's going to have it's going to snow, and there's going to be fans. Which I've already made my opinion clear that I think it's kind of unfair that certain teams get fans.
Buffalo showed it this weekend. Holy crap!
I mean, look at the facts. Every team who had lots of fans won, except for the Saints. But the Saints didn't have enough fans for it really to make a difference.
And the Jags.
Well, the Jags? They weren't
The Jags had fans all season. Same with the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's okay. That's whatever. But I'm talking about the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like I was watching that Bills game. I was like, man,
they loud, boy.
It's so loud. And then I was watching, and same with the Packers game and the Chiefs game. I don't know. That's another conversation, but
I think it's a fair point for sure.
I do think it's like it takes away the advantage of everybody having whatever. And honestly, I feel like the Packers are going to kind of demolish the Bucs. This offense
is still rough.
Is just on a roll. The Packers offense is just on a roll.
Yeah, for sure.
And the defense for the Buccaneers, like, yes, they played well tonight, but it's
they have to do it next week.
Yeah,
they have to.
That's just a better air, and it's weird because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't see. I'm sure it'll be a much closer game than I think it's going to be in my mind, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. The main thing with the Packers, oh my God, that defense is not good. It's just not. And there's such a stark contrast between this Packers team than what was it, the 2009 team that won the title.
Yeah,
because
which was old offense, which was old defense.
You got Charles Woodson, Clay Matthews. That was literally a defensive team. That's what we talked about. We said that was the blueprint for Aaron to get to this point. Obviously, I think the league has changed way too much for that to be the case. I mean, you see the Final Four teams. You saw the Browns-Chiefs game today as a perfect example of that. This offense with LaFleur, I don't know how he's doing this because really they only have Devontae. Robert Tonyan finished as a top 5 tight end in fantasy this year. I think he finished pretty high in real life as well. But other than that, this offense, MVS has been good, but let's be honest, that receiving core is still not great, and even with that, they're crazy because of how fast they play. Quick. I think quick's a better word than fast.
They're still able to pound the rock, though.
Yeah, and with 3 running backs, they're literally doing it with everybody they have, which is crazy.
See, I disagree. I think their wide receiving core is actually pretty good. I mean, Devontae is obviously amazing. Best route runner in the league, probably. But I mean, I'm impressed with, what I see from guys like Valdez-Scantling, for instance. He's not like amazing, but he gets the job done, I don't know. I mean, what's his name? Robert Tonyan. He's really coming to his own this year as well. So, I mean, there's a reason that they are doing as well as they are, and I don't, I don't think that it's all done with just one good receiver. I mean, I think they all have their own strengths and things that they bring to this offense. So, yeah, I mean that defense though is yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting, especially their pass defense concerns me.
Yeah.
Jairee Alexander is really good as a corner, but other than that, they kind of concern me.
The Smith Bros are pretty good, but they don't get as much pressure as you would like. It is. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's more of a really interesting scheme by LaFleur and Rodgers. The first last year, it was ugly. They couldn't really get it together that much, and we were like, "Oh my god!" No, I think the Jordan Love pick has something to do with it. Whether Rodgers will say that or not, looks like he'll be inactive for another year or two, unfortunately, for the money that they're spending on him. But either way,
Yeah.
I mean, that has something to do with it. But also, I think what LaFleur has done with this game, and honestly, I think what dang it, the guy out of BC who we were like, oh, AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
We were like, what the heck is that pick? He's made a big, I'm surprised that they're using all three of them the way they are. Bad for fantasy, but good for real life, of course.
Well, AJ Dillon is, when they drafted him, I was immediately kind of like, at first I was like, why did they draft him? And I was like, oh, they probably drafted him as like a third down goal line back.
They can use him any point in the field. They've shown the last couple weeks.
But they've also used him more just this season as like a third down goal line guy. Just kind of like a battering ram guy. And in a way, it's sort of like how they had what was his name?
One of their old school fullbacks or whatever.
He was with the Seahawks for a year.
I don't remember the name necessarily, but either way.
But he heavy set dude. Came back.
I don't remember the name.
Eddie Lacy. He's kind of like how they had Lacy, who was
like
just
at a steakhouse.
Really.
That was actually kind of funny. He was his arms
are huge.
Biggest arms I'd ever seen in my life. Yeah. I mean, it was like, I'm not even kidding. His arms were like, his biceps were bigger than my thighs.
Yeah.
Like, it was insane.
Yeah, Eddie Lacy, one of the more interesting careers in the NFL, I would say. At least some of the one.
And that was after he was cut by the Seahawks. So he was still in the area for some reason. So we were there on a Saturday, and then as we were leaving, my mom goes up to him and he's like, "Oh, good luck tomorrow," not knowing cut. And I was like, "Oh no, no."
Yikes!
Oh my god. Eddie Lacy, the work with the P90X folks, unfortunately didn't really help him, but it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, back to the Packers, it's crazy just how great Matt LaFleur's scheme is. I love how I don't even think fast is the word. I honestly think quick is the word. I love how, again, we've talked about this for years and years. I've talked about it constantly. Teams that throw the ball quickly, they do it with perfection. It's crazy. That team. It's gonna be tough for the Packers, or for the Bucs to deal with that.
You know something else I've heard about why Aaron Rodgers is doing so well this year? And I'm not saying this is true, but it very well could be. Did any of you guys notice that around June, July, he broke up with Danica Patrick?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if we. I mean,
I'm just saying. I don't know. Maybe they were in a bit of a rocky situation, and it brought him down. I don't know.
I mean. Also, keep in mind he's been making a lot of time for the Pat McAfee show, and he's going to be on Jeopardy pretty soon as well.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
No, but I think there's a variety of factors, but Aaron's definitely really motivated, and this is a team that is right up there for sure. Let's move on to that Chiefs-Browns game. Honestly, so this game was weird, wasn't it? Because it really felt like it was over. Like halfway through the game, you're like, "Oh, this is done." The Chiefs have it in the back
at the same time, you know.
Well, no, like I thought it was because I was like, this is done. You know, it's the Browns and all this stuff. And God, that Browns defense is ugly. I mean,
I thought the Browns were gonna win when
yeah,
I did
me
too.
too. Like
when
fourth quarter.
when
Surprised they didn't,
Mahomes
to be
got
honest.
murdered.
Yeah,
He has a concussion,
yeah.
pretty
Did he have a
severe
neck
one.
injury too?
I don't know. They're not saying anything about a neck injury.
Looked like it. Jeez.
Yeah,
That hit was
and
crazy.
people were saying like, oh, the guy who did the hit should be ejected. It's like, well, actually, no, that wasn't really
That wasn't intentional.
right. And also, they're saying it's like some people were saying like, oh, it was a Shane, what's the thing where you grab the guy by the back of the neck? Horse collar.
Horse collar.
Except it wasn't.
It was not.
Why'd you ask me why that was called?
Because you played football. Like,
Or Robert wouldn't know.
I don't know. You know, it's
I watch way too much football to not know
sometimes
this
people
stuff.
who've played know more about. I don't know.
I mean, I would say from a technical perspective, but that's why I'm the that's
Yeah.
why I'm that's why you guys
Anyway.
are the analysts.
But yeah, I think I said at one point in chat, I said, Brown's gonna Brown.
Yeah, that was like in the third quarter,
Yeah, I said in the third quarter, Brown's gonna Brown, and it's like
which is even funnier now.
they got beat by freaking Chad Henne,
Yeah, a 35-year-old.
who I also said, how are you gonna let Henne run for like
I'm
15
sure-
yards?
It was man coverage.
Yeah, but how are you
And then
not
he just
gonna
going.
just assume? How are you not gonna assume the man is gonna take off running if you give it to him?
Dude, have you seen? Well, I mean, let's be honest. Chad Henne looked like the fastest he's ever run in his life.
Probably.
Because dude, remember when he was in Jacksonville? He was slow.
Dude, did you
in
see the way he
Jacksonville.
popped up and was celebrating after? He's like, "Yeah, I did it." It's like,
Yeah, no,
yes, you
that's
actually
the
did
fastest
something, Henne.
That's the fastest Henny's ever run in his life. Because I've never seen Henne run
Yeah, it looked
that
like
much.
someone
And
had
I've
like.
watched like a lot of Chad Henne games.
It looked like
He's
his
not
butt
quick.
was on fire the way he ran. But my point is this: like, first of all, I think I said something like the Chiefs were acting very Patriots-like after their win, which
Yeah.
is true.
I mean, it was a crazy game. It was a crazy game though. So
But at the same time, I will say this:
What do you mean by
you know the
Patriots-like?
you know the saying, "Act like you've been there before."
Yeah.
that's
The Browns were not acting like they'd been there before.
Well, they haven't.
But you know what I mean, Robert. You know what I mean, though.
I know, but they haven't in
But-
like the last 15 years.
Shane, you know what I mean, right?
I get what you
Like
mean.
Yeah.
play
still.
with some composure. Be
Yeah.
respectful. Don't be a
I don't know.
dingus.
I
Don't
feel like
be-
you got. I feel like the main thing is like a playoff game is just so insane. Like I when I watch playoff games, I'm like so crazy because it's just like it's the playoffs. I get new energy. The players do too. There's something to be said for just being hype. You gotta win, especially in that type of game.
Also, what I mean by being by Patriot like Shane is like
I
being
understand
very, very
that.
cocky, very like
I understand
like
why you feel that way.
peacocking, strutting around, be like you like.
Wait,
with
are
the
we
Patriots-
giving NBC free advertising? What's
Oh,
going on?
Maybe
little
I don't
bit
know,
at the
What-
end.
but like
A
what
little
you,
bit at the
what
end.
you said about Tyreek Hill, like I agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I also
No,
agree.
Tyreek
Like
absolutely was.
he was being a dingus.
I just don't like when people are just loud like that. Like
Yeah, you don't need to be
him,
loud.
um
You want it.
Jalen Ramsey.
Congrats.
That guy pisses me
Yeah,
off. He's
same.
so annoying.
Same.
love
Richard
watching him
Sherman, even when he was a Seahawk, he
Yeah.
always bothered me. I did not like him.
I liked him when he was a Seahawk, but that's just because he talked shit to everyone.
I mean, I like him as a player, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, not as a
But like yeah. Here's
Off
the thing.
the field as a player.
Watching the game,
Well, no,
I
I
was
like him
like
off the field.
watching
I'm
the
just saying,
Browns,
as a player off the field when you're not actually playing the game,
Well,
things like that.
watching the Browns Chiefs game. The thought that popped in my mind with the Chiefs was this: you won. Act like you're the better team. Don't be the ones dicking around, yelling, getting in fights, and being
I'm not the
and
biggest
being-
fan of this argument just because
why?
it's
Like
it's a
Robert,
valid argument, but it
they-
also is not really like I don't know how to necessarily explain it. I feel like in some ways it's an old school view of the game.
But no, I'm coming at
because-
this from someone who's played the game.
Right. And
Being an
I
athlete.
respect that. But my whole thing for me, it's like I really feel, and this is the way I even watch playoff football. There's something to be said for like the way the game goes and like how crazy it is. And at some point you're just like, the hype gets to you. And like Lamar last week, I felt that was the case. It's just kind of what it is. Now, unfortunately, I could also make this argument and say the league is more quote unquote flamboyant than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the way the culture of the game is shifted to a younger audience, younger players, even to a younger audience. It's I understand where you're coming from. I get it. But at the same time, there is something to be said on the way these players, everybody as a whole, and the way the league is now. It's much different, where this to me isn't as big of an issue as it used to be 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, and it might not be a big issue, like, per se, but it's just like, it's not, but like,
It seems to happen more.
right. It
Right.
happens
But
more and more,
again-
and it bothered me, Robert. And here's
Right.
why it bothers me, right? Because it's a mindset issue. It also is why I believe the Chiefs will not make the Super Bowl now. Because if you're the Chiefs and you're able to be flustered as a team by getting chippy with the Browns, when you should be able to beat the Browns, and you're getting in that, and they're getting in your brain, because let's be honest here, the Chiefs were the better team starting the game, during the game, end of the game. They were the better team. They should have won that game at any point. And they did. They made it way too close. They got chippy. They got angry. They got pissed off with themselves. But that's the problem. The Chiefs of last year, they fought to the end. They stayed together. They played as a team. They didn't get angry. They didn't get chippy. They didn't get whatever. They got it done. I don't think they're going to get it done because they stooped down to the level and had players like here's my thing, and this is one of my things with the Chiefs this whole season. It's been the antics. It's been the Hollywoodizing of them. It's been the photography, and it happens with every team that wins the Super Bowl. It's like you win the Super Bowl and you become the hot shots. You become the superstars. You get flashy. You get dumb. You make mistakes. And I think Chiefs team will not win the Super Bowl back to back.
Well, here's the thing. How I really feel like what you're speaking to is how the culture of the game has changed over time. It's not even, and this is why I don't have as much of an issue with it. It's not because I don't see your point. I definitely do. It's because how the game is nowadays, and there's so many teams that we talk about. The Browns is a good example. The Steelers have been a classic example of this over the last 4 years. But the culture of the game is conducive to that Hollywood attitude. It just is. It's conducive to a younger audience because of it. Ravens Titans, even last week, is a good example of that because they played in the playoff game last year. I don't think it's talked about as much nowadays just because, unfortunately, it's not necessarily the best thing in the world, but the culture of the game, the way the game is played, how chippy the game gets, it's just sort of how the game is played today.
It's more normal.
I think it's also when you give
it's more normal. I think that's the main key.
Yeah.
It's just a more normal way the game is played now because it's really driving itself to a younger audience, much different than other sports like the NBA, for example.
And maybe I'm just like an older thinking in terms of the way I think about it, but like I do think about it I
think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think it brings a much different perspective to the game, a much unique perspective to the game in those senses. But again, I think a lot of this is just like hype, excitement, the craziness of the game, the Hollywoodness of the game, I think is a great way to put it because that's kind of what it is now. It's just the culture of the game has completely changed to this way. And you can make an argument. It started with guys like,
but I also think that if you put a team like the Chiefs up against a team like the Packers, I think the Packers have the advantage because they're just a team that's like, they are a team that's the epitome of the old ways of that NFL. They're a hard-nosed, gritty, grindstone, like conglomerate team where they come together, they stay together, they fight for each other, they play for each other. They don't get flashy about it. They don't make big statements. They're just kind of like, yeah, we did it, we done it, we're done.
Well,
we're gonna move on.
I think they're flamboyant in a different way.
How so?
Kevin Clark made a great tweet yesterday about just how annoying it is for other players when Aaron Rodgers is smiling and having a good time. I think every team has a flamboyant side, even the Packers do, but they don't necessarily show it as publicly as I wouldn't even put the Chiefs necessarily in that category. I probably put the Steelers and the Browns more in that category just because of the historic of the last 5 years. But I think every team does it in their own way. Sometimes it's a lot less noticeable, and maybe that is definitely a lot more professional in different ways. But as Kevin Clark said in his tweet, I think that's really important. Like, Aaron's just tough when he's having fun, but he's smiling and doing it in his own way. And there's things that we don't see, the trash talking on the field, things like that. There's just stuff that we don't see. I think obviously, like we see the after the game, the post game, things like that. But I think the league as a whole is just, again, becoming more flamboyant. The culture is conducive to that. It is what it is. That's just kind of what it is. And and even with Aaron Rodgers, him smiling and having a good time on the field, you see that, but you don't realize how much it frustrates the other players and how much it angers them in that way too. So I think every team has that in a different way. Shane, what's kind of your perspective on that as well?
I guess the Lambeau Leap is also like the biggest, like a giant flamboyant thing.
Well,
like,
I would also say that's also a historical thing. So
well, it's a historical thing, but if you think about it, it's like it's being a historical middle finger to like the other team. Like, hey, we just scored, get fucked. Now I'm going to jump to the stands with my fans.
Shane, what is your sort of overall thought on sort of what I said and all that stuff? And sort of, I think the culture of the game piece is kind of where we're coming to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it too that we have to consider is, players are getting paid way more now than they ever have been. I mean, there's, you hear Terry Bradshaw tell stories about how even though he was playing football and making it big, he still had to like get a second mortgage on his house and all this stuff.
Yeah, I think he said he, like, by the time he was done playing, he'd made something like a maximum of like 700,000 or something, like his entire career.
Yeah. Right. And now it's like, if a player makes that little, they're, like a practice squad guy or something.
Yeah. So practice squad is $850 now, I think. So.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the 70s and 80s, the greatest quarterback of the entire decade was making that much,
One of the greatest, yeah.
So, yeah. So anyways, there's that. And also, I think a large part of it too is also social media, players all getting involved in that. I mean, you get guys like, who is it, Juju Smith-Schuster doing a damn TikTok dance on the middle of the field before a game.
That was a little bit too flamboyant for me. When we get to the Steelers, I'll speak on that.
Just stuff like that. It's like, what are you doing? This is just unnecessary. But that's, having social media and all this stuff has created that kind of culture. Guys can, and like this year, guys can zoom into a radio talk show or whatever and just talk about whatever. Aaron Rodgers, for instance. We've seen Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Juju, Chase Claypool being interviewed on quite a few different shows. And so, I think it's just all that stuff. And the fact that so many people have, their side hustles, like their clothing brand or their shoes or whatever, and merchandise this and that and yada yada yada. So and the fact that, I mean, NFL now is just such a television product in general.
Yeah.
So
and I was thinking about the fact about like why just now. I was thinking like, why does it bother me so much? And I realized it's because I was the guy who, like, I was always the hothead when I played. Like I was like the because like I played a very aggressive position. Like I played nose guard, and like I got up in the grills of the offensive linemen, and it's like there is a lot of particular language that goes on between defensive linemen and offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crap talk that goes on, and people would find it very vulgar. But here's the thing: I always was the guy who like got like pissed off easily when people were doing antics. And so it's like kind of translated over, I think, to like when I watch football, and I'm like, "Are you come on?" Like,
Yeah.
there's a time and a place. But I think I realize also like if it stopped, it would just get started up again by the networks pushing the NFL to be like, "Come on, we gotta encourage like we gotta encourage the antics, we gotta encourage the fights, we gotta encourage."
That's happened the last 5 years. Remember the whole celebration rule thing?
Yeah.
How it wasn't a thing. Then players and the networks were like, "What the heck?" And then
Right,
we got the celebration.
I love celebrations. I think they're hilarious, and I think they're great. And I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like I'm like an old man stuck in a 24-year-old's body.
Well, I think here's the thing also. I think we've talked about this in recent years. We've talked about this in our 2 years of existence on the show. Teams like, again, the Steelers, who I had a problem with Juju this year doing the TikTok dance. I did because I felt like, hey, this is what the Steelers brand now is just flamboyancy to a stupid degree. The Browns were, I think they've been a lot better this year. And we talked about those problems last year. Yeah, I think for some teams, it is a big problem. And it does put them under this sort of thing. The Steelers used to be a legacy organization. I don't think they are that anymore. I think I think we've saw that this year, especially if Big Ben does decide to hang it up in the offseason. We'll see what happens there. But they're definitely a lot more flamboyant than we all like, and it's definitely hurt them. I mean, ultimately, I think another piece of this, or like for some, to finish up that point, some teams are like that, and it's like, what the heck? Some teams like the Chiefs, I'm like, okay. Even the Ravens, I'm like, okay, it's a big game, hype up. I'm not as much on that because we don't see it week after week like we saw with the Steelers and the Browns, particularly last year. It's not an every week thing. But also, I think one of the more interesting things that I'm thinking about. So, of course, we watched the Nickelodeon game last week. By the way, you should talk about that because that was kind of nutty.
I loved the Nickelodeon broadcast. It was great.
The Nickelodeon broadcast kind of set this to me as well, where it's like this is the year where the NFL has been so focused on gaining a younger viewership, a younger audience because of COVID and everything else. It's a perfect opportunity for them to gain a younger audience and figure out how to do that in their own ways. As the league in some way, as the NBA over the last 4 or 5 years has become more of a social media product, more of a kid-friendly product, if you will, than the NFL has. So I think it's been interesting. Yeah, the Nickelodeon broadcast was super fun. The Slime Zone, loved the commentary. Shane, you said it was sort of a lot more casual, and that's sort of why you enjoyed it in particular. But Brandon, I'll start with you. And why did you enjoy that broadcast?
Yeah, I agree with Shane on that. It was kind of like sitting in a living room with your friends and just kind of like listening to people like dish on the game and kind of talk about the game. And the thing I found very hysterical was the unfiltered unfiltered F word.
Cordero Patterson,
which was just so great.
Let's see. what did Noah say?
And you could tell the ref was like, "Oh no, oh no!" It's like so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was like my thing is because most of the time the commentary it's like it's very serious and they're all dressed up in their suits and
very structured,
tuxedos, whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're all professional and but this was just they were just dressed kind of like business casuals and they were like a few friends just hanging out, like having fun. And then it was funny too, just like all the all the obscure references and
Alvin
like,
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah.
no,
Taysom
like,
Hill,
my
SpongeBob and
favorite,
Patrick.
yeah, that my favorite was Drew Brees and Taysom Hill being like SpongeBob and Patrick.
Yeah.
And
And whenever they scored, like going back to the Krabby Patty, it's like, yay!
Oh, yeah.
and they finally did the sweet victory.
Sweet victory, yeah.
I was like, yes.
Yeah, props to Noah Eagle, Gabby. I forgot her last name. She's an actor for Nickelodeon and or actress for Nickelodeon, excuse me, and Nate Burleson. Sideline reporting that was fun too, but he was a bit nervous with Cam Jordan. I could tell, but still, he was great as well. I watched the whole game, the entire game on the Nickelodeon broadcast. And like, yeah, it's a bit kiddish, but it wasn't as cringeworthy as we would have expected. I thought it was fun. I want to watch it again next year in the wild card weekend. It's fun, and it still was great for the adult viewer as well, because you got some weird stuff like young Sheldon explaining what a false start was, and like
that was great,
and like the block stuff for the highlights. Like there was some weird stuff, but at the same time, the core of the game was still super fun for the adult viewer, and I think that was great as well.
And I think if you really stopped for a second and was like, it's for kids, it took away the cringe factor.
Yeah.
Hey, Brandon, can you lower your TV for me a bit? It's getting a bit too loud.
I was gonna say,
it's getting a bit too loud there. My apologies there. No, but it was a super fun broadcast. I watched the whole thing from that perspective, and it was fun. I love Jim Nance and Tony Romo, but it was definitely fun to watch it from that perspective. Let's get to some of the other games of the weekend. Obviously, let's get to the Bills game next. That was definitely a raucous crowd. A fun one against the Ravens. Of course, Lamar was also in concussion protocol as well. Actually, I think the biggest thing for me was that Bills defense finally showing up as the Bills defense. Brandon, I'll start with you. Do you think this is something that they can continue next week?
They're going to have to. I think if they can keep that defense going, it'll be a good they'll have a very, very good chance against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I don't think the Chiefs they didn't have much of a defense today.
No, they haven't all year.
And yeah, I think we literally, turns out we were right at the beginning of the season when we were talking about literally after game 1, Robert, when you and I were talking about how the Chiefs just weren't going to score as much and they weren't going to have as much of a defense this year. Both things were right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, the Bills' offense looked a little bit weak, but we'll see.
It was a bit. I think the Ravens' defense is nasty. They've been like that all year. So
yeah, I think it was a tough game defensively. I mean, because like the Chiefs' defense is, I think, half what the Ravens' defense was. And so, on top of that, I doubt they're going to have Mahomes. Maybe they will. I don't know. But, with that, I just feel like they're really going to have to rely on the run game, which isn't the worst thing against the Bills defense because, Bills don't have a good rush defense. But, I do think that, in the end, that does limit them. So, yeah, I like the Bills here.
yeah, I'm gonna take the Bills in this game as well. In this game against the Chiefs on Sunday, I'm gonna take the Bills, and I think I'm gonna take the Packers as well. I think with the Bills, they Josh Allen's been super impressive. Him and Stephon Diggs have been just crazy all year. But if that defense can play to that level, I see them maybe winning the whole thing at this point, just because that defense can be that good. They show that they can be that good, but again, no time for, you got to have consistency now. This is not week 12. You got to have that consistency now, or else you're not going to go far, even though you made the conference title game. So I think that's super important. Any last words on the Bills before we move on to some of these head coaching hires, Brandon?
Nope. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Let's start with the one that you talked about earlier, the Chargers hiring Brandon Staley, the defensive coordinator for the Rams. I'm not the biggest fan of this hire because as the league is getting more offense, I guess getting defense is good. But how do you think he's going to work with Justin Herbert? It is a bit of a strange hire to me, at least.
It's not that strange of a hire for me because there weren't that many hireable coaches left. All the good there were really maybe two big name guys. One of them being the only
Urban.
place and he was only going to go to Jacksonville or no one, I think. And
Jason
with Urban,
Garrett.
I don't think
Who Shane?
did
Sorry,
Jason Garrett. Did he get a job?
no, Garrett wasn't on my list at all. No way.
Because I was like, I don't think Garrett's gonna I don't think he'll coach in the league again as a head coach.
Nah, I think it's gonna be a while.
But
They interviewed him. I know that.
okay, well,
Interesting.
I don't know. It's. I think it's a good pickup for them because they have some. I mean, as we've talked about, like they have some pieces that defense could be pretty good.
It could. So maybe that's what it is. It's more so that
Yeah.
that defense with a couple more pieces, the offense is already pretty set. They can find themselves.
Yeah, I think it's also that they tried an offensive head coach.
Yeah.
So
And Anthony Lynn. Shane, your thoughts on the Chargers' new hire?
Yeah, I don't think it's a great hire. I'll be honest. I mean, I personally wish they would have gone offense because, as critical as we'd all been of their defense this year, they still finished, I think, like 10th in yards, which is pretty good, especially considering they didn't have their safety. What's his name?
Derwin James, who's
Yes.
hopefully going to be back next year.
Yeah.
Hopefully, please let him be healthy. Please. Oh my God.
Lord.
Please let him be healthy.
breaks his leg off in the preseason.
Man.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Please let him be healthy because he's such a key for that defense.
Yeah.
And that defense is so much fun when he's on the field. It really is so much fun.
So, I mean, I figured, like, okay, if they have him back, then that defense gets a lot better. They just need, like, that creative offensive person, or not even creative, but just, like, a good offensive mind to just get them over that little hump there in the end, help them pull it out. But I guess they think otherwise. So, we'll see. We will see, but...
We'll get to another offensive coordinator hire. I want to save the Urban Meyer hire for the last one. Robert Szolosi, Jets. Shane, your thoughts on Robert Szolosi going from the Niners D coordinator to the Jets job? Is this a long-term stable situation for him as it wasn't for Adam Gase?
I mean, I certainly hope so. I think that despite the fact that San Francisco had so many injuries and so many problems with their defense, and the fact that they still held it together and stayed pretty competitive for the most part defensively, I think that's a good sign for somebody like him. And he's just Adam Gase. Just he's just like, he looks like he's always stoned, and he's like
that press conference.
I'm not wrong. That's the thing.
That presser was bad, bro.
He always looks like he's just stoned and he's like on another planet. He's he just has no life, no energy at all. He's like, yeah.
Maybe he was stoned this year with how bad the team was.
Honestly, maybe, but no. In his press conferences, the
presser was like, bad. All I'm gonna say is the presser was bad.
His eyes were just wide open. He's like,
the presser was bad. Everything else, I'm not gonna worry about. But the presser was bad.
So baked. He's like, well, the goal is to come out every week and win.
See, so like the Adam Gase thing was so annoying. Go ahead, Shane, on that before I.
Well, I was just gonna say, whereas like Robert Szolosi is the exact opposite. I mean, he's like, you see him, he's always on the sidelines, hyped up, clapping his guys on. So yeah, if he can try and help develop that defense, it'd be good because New York is, yeah, the Jets, they're in a good position with all their draft picks if they can draft well and maybe take advantage of free agency, which I assume we'll talk a little bit more about in a second after certain something came out. Yeah, I mean, I think he could work really well there. We'll see how he does offensively. That's the real question when you hire a coordinator, is how they do on the other side of their respective strength. So, yeah, I'm interested in this. I like it. I dig it.
Before I let Brandon go on this, so a couple things. Adam Gase, number one, was like a quarterback guru, like that's kind of what his representation was with coming into the Jets, at least from their organizational perspective, because they look at Darnold and they're like, oh yeah, Sam Darnold, let's get kind of a QB coach here, right? And honestly, that I was like, no, Adam Gase ain't that at all, and he wasn't, and he got fired after the first year. We knew this was going to be the case. I literally
I thought
knew
he was there
it.
2 years.
No, I thought they hired him last year.
Oh,
They did, I believe. Either way,
well, anyways, yeah.
with Saleh, with Saleh, the main thing with me with Saleh, energy. Oh my God, get this team some energy. Get this team to be competitive. Saleh is that. I know a lot of people don't like his sideline antics in some ways, and I get that. But man, is it fun for a team when their coach just goes crazy.
Yeah.
He just does that, and he's going to give them some well-needed energy. I need the Jets to do one thing. Keep Sam Darnold unless Deshaun Watson is clearly attainable, which it looks like he is. We'll get to that in a bit with the Jets. Brandon, what are your overall thoughts on this hire?
It's interesting. I think Saleh has definitely proved that he's a head coach material. He's coached under 2 winning coaches. I had forgotten that he was on the Super Bowl team when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl.
Oh, he was on that?
Yeah, he was. He was like the assistant
D-line or something, I think?
Yeah, he was like assistant D-line or something, or assistant linebackers coach or something. I don't know. But he was on that team, and then he was the defensive coordinator for San Francisco. I think it's a great pickup. And it's good that they gave him a 5-year contract.
Yeah,
because
I like
that way
they're committed.
Right, they're committing, and what I hate is when teams give someone who hasn't had experience as a coach, as a head coach, they just give them like a 1-year contract or something, or a 2-year contract. That way, you can't really feel like you have any, leeway.
For Saleh, he needs a long leash with this team,
right?
Because it's not something that's going to get fixed in 1 or 2 years. It's just not.
He needs to know that he's not going to come in, have a terrible season, and then get fired.
Yeah.
So
the other piece of this, of course, is Deshaun Watson. It is very clear that he'll be out. My first point with this is a wide range, overarching point. The league is becoming the NBA, and it's great. Quarterbacks, Andrew Luck should have done this years ago. Brady did it last year in some respects. Quarterbacks need to say, I hate this spot, trade me. They legit need to do this more often.
Or release me and I'll pick where I go.
Well, that's kind of, hey.
It's a little harder, but
It's like Deshaun took the money. Please take the money and ask for a trade a year later. I'm cool with that. And let's have this happen more often because it makes the league more fun.
And there's only one team that's in position right now to A, pick up a contract like Deshaun's, and B, has the pieces to trade for him.
There's only 2.
There's really one, and that's the Jets.
Dolphins are a real deal.
Okay, the Jets, but here's the thing: the Jets have more.
Yeah, they have more space.
And I think the Jets are more likely to make the move than the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins might make the move, but honestly, you know what's ironic? The Seahawks doing their deal with the Jets for
For Adams, for
Adams
Jamal.
opened the door for them to be able to do this and shut the door on a team like, I don't know, San Francisco, for being able to do it.
Yeah. Like the Jets have more to offer, but I like the Dolphins fit more because I think the Jets that O-line's getting better. It just to me with the Jets, if we're talking about Deshaun Watson and like where he wants to go, I don't think it's high on his list. I just don't because while Saleh is great and they're clearly wanting to go in a different direction, let's be honest here. It's kind of the same issues as Houston. It just kind of is. Like the O-line is bad. The receiving core is honestly worse than Houston's. Like he's kind of just going to the same situation. That's why I think the Dolphins are. I don't think he's just going to get traded anywhere. I think they're going to work with him to make a trade happen. I think it's going to be sort of like a James Harden situation in some ways. I just don't see the Jets being a good fit for him just because it's just sort of the same problems.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me, Shane? It's not like he doesn't go in there and immediately make them a contender. He makes them a playoff team, but he wants to go somewhere where we can make him a contender. You can make an argument, a substantial argument that a team like Miami probably puts themselves at least on the threshold of Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, I think if he goes to Miami, they probably win like 12 games. I think if he ends up in New York with Robert Saleh, whatever kind of draft they put together, you know, it could, I mean, just him going there, I see them winning like at least 6 or 7, probably.
I push it up to about, well, I would say like 8-8, 9-7 still, because Deshaun's going to still get 8 wins.
They got to build on that team to get.
Yeah.
I still think like
that's the thing. Like
the Jets don't have
wins,
anyone, but I don't see the Jets getting 6 or 7 wins next year. I see maybe them getting like 4.
If they get Deshaun, you don't bump up their wins by.
If they get Deshaun,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
But without Deshaun, I mean, here's the thing: if it's either for Deshaun, it's either do I want to go to a team where like I could be a major starting piece for a rebuild,
which is what you are in Houston at this point, which is stupid.
But here's the thing: the Jets, I think, with Saleh, have proven like, okay, we have a guy now. If we get a guy like Deshaun, let's start the rebuild.
But why would I? But if I'm Deshaun, why would I want to be back in that same position, a start of a rebuild, like it was at the beginning of his career in Houston?
Because as weird as this is going to say, as weird as this is going to sound, you actually have a better front office than you had.
The Jets are more on the right track than Houston.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, but I don't. If he's going to ask for a trade,
and I really doubt that Miami has any interest in parting with Tua right now.
Which, I mean, hey, like, again, it's Deshaun Watson. Regardless of what we all think of Tua, this is Deshaun Watson we're talking about here. Yeah. This is if I'm Miami, I'm like, slow your roll. Let's just trade Tua to Houston and give like a bunch of picks.
Opinion.
Like, bro, like honestly, like just it's Deshaun Watson we're talking about here. This is not Tua. And and here's the thing. If the Tua development thing doesn't work, they're gonna be like the Jacksonville situation when they made the AFC title game and Blake Bortles. If it doesn't work, then you just wasted what could be a Super Bowl contender. That's my thing. It's like now, if you really like this opportunity might not come very often in the NFL. Like, I hope it becomes more of a thing, but if it doesn't, go for it. Also, Niners, is that feasible here? Because he's made some
No.
weird tweets about the Niners. Are we talking about a Garoppolo trade here?
The Niners don't have pieces. Any
I
team.
mean, Garoppolo, a few picks.
Houston's gonna want lots of picks.
Yeah. Value picks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I don't know. That's gonna be tough.
They don't
Maybe.
want players. They want pieces because I think San Francisco is going to be kind of a. I don't think they have any thinking that they're going to be like a really good team for the next couple of years.
Wait, who? Houston?
No, San Francisco. My bad.
I don't know. I think San Francisco still believes they're in a competitive spot, but I
Well,
wonder
then-
how.
well, then
committed
they're
they are.
crazy.
Depends on injuries, I think.
Yeah, it was mostly injuries.
Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think San Fran's kind of on the upper echelon. I just love the Miami fit. I'm like so in on that Miami thing. And like if the Jets make the move, do you think Darnold's going in that deal? Or no? Or he's going in a separate deal? Because if the Jets make this deal, they give them the number 2 pick, which would probably be Fields at this point. We'll get to Jacksonville in a bit on that side, but it'd probably be Fields. So maybe Houston gets number 2 pick, goes Fields. Maybe they trade Darnold. Like if I'm the Jets, I'm honestly keeping Darnold. I don't see like why I wouldn't. Like I think I need one more year of him, especially under Sala. I need one more year under Darnold to feel like I'm ready to move off him. Maybe 2, considering how ridiculously bad that roster is right now. But am I being unreasonable here?
I mean, I just want to see what all exactly happens,
Yeah.
and then talk
Yeah.
about the draft.
There's like so much speculation on this.
Yeah.
There
But-
is some unearthing. There actually, before we get to Atlanta's hire, there is some weird speculation that I've also cultivated on this show, I think a few times already, about what Urban Meyer's going to do with that quarterback position, Lawrence Fields, right? And I've talked about the potential and how I feel like there's a shot that Fields is that guy. I mean, the Ohio State connection obviously isn't that big. I don't know. It's starting to feel maybe a little bit more unreasonable as the weeks go by. Is Lawrence clearly the guy for Jacksonville? And why do you think people, as a sort of collective, said Jacksonville was the best spot here? Shane, I'll start with you. Why was Jacksonville the best coaching job? Why was it perfect for Urban Meyer to come back there? And do you think this Lawrence Fields thing has any merit to it?
Well, for him, because what has he done his whole career? He's gone into a place, rebuilt it, established a culture, and then made greatness from it. He's done that with Ohio State, with Florida, and whatever the one before that was. Now, the NFL is different, obviously. But I think this job, you got all that, plus you got the number 1 overall pick, so you can get potentially a really good quarterback.
Do you think the Fields at number 1 has merit to it, or do you feel like that's died down?
I personally would take Justin Fields.
You would. I'm
Absolutely.
Lawrence all the way for me on
Now,
that.
here's the thing. I told you guys about this just when we were casually talking, but I haven't said this on the show. So I originally said on the show that I liked Lawrence, but thought that Fields was a little overrated. Since then, I've really done a lot of watching tape, looking at their situations, whatever. I've kind of flipped that stance. I think Justin Fields actually has more potential just as a raw athlete, whereas Trevor Lawrence, I'm kind of 50-50 on. So, or I mean, not 50-50. I think he'll be good, but I don't know if I see him being like an NFL star necessarily. Anyways, so I would take Justin Fields, and it seemed like Urban Meyer would have done that because of the Ohio State connection. However,
It's not even that big, though, to be fair.
That's
It's
the
just
thing.
Ryan Day.
and also he did say, I think a lot of us have forgotten this, but Urban Meyer did say that Trevor Lawrence is the best college quarterback he had ever seen. So
Yeah.
That for me kind of seals the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, forget all that. I just worry about his health, because he has a brain cyst, right? That's
Wait,
like his.
Lawrence? I don't know
No, no,
about
no,
that.
no. Urban Meyer.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause
That's why he retired originally.
Yeah. So I just want to know if he'll actually be able to handle that. But
Yeah.
anyways,
His staff is super interesting because he's bringing on a lot of former NFL guys to kind of show him the ropes as well. Brandon, what are your thoughts on the Urban hire and sort of the Fields Lawrence debate, which I think has kind of become a 1A, 1B kind of situation?
I got nothing to say about Urban Meyer. And the reason I got nothing to say about him is because at first I was like, oh, that's such a great hire, And then I went back and I looked at his history. And Jacksonville must really like this guy. They must really want a winning coach because, oh my God, this guy, he's got a history in college. His history of covering things up, of allowing people to be abusive, to be
that's there too.
racist,
That's there too.
To be sexist, to be homophobic. It's bad.
No,
And
it's a bad history.
Talking about it.
No, it's bad.
It's problematic. And I refuse to act to talk about the man in a way that's like positive. I think it's frankly, I think it's kind of disgusting that Jacksonville is giving him a chance as head coach because it's like I feel like any other coach who had that past as a head coach in college would not have gotten.
Yeah, there are college
NFL,
especially. It's definitely
so,
there. Sure.
I mean, you just
for sure
do a quick Google search and it's right there.
Yeah.
He was part of that Florida team that had he was the head coach for the notorious Florida team.
The preacher, the rapist,
right? Exactly.
The racist, the murderer.
It sounds like a friggin' joke. Like, he hid behind Tim Tebow's Christianity as like, oh, this team is so great, like it's so pure, and I don't know. I'm just gonna say this, Robert. Y'all can talk about him. I'm tapping out of this.
But let me not have you tap out on the Lawrence Fields thing. What do you feel about that? Does that have merit to it for you?
I think they're both really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of depends what type of quarterback you want.
Yeah.
Like if you want running quarterback, I would say Justin Fields. If you want an super athletic all-around guy, I would say Trevor Lawrence. I think it's going to come down to just preference.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, a lot of ways I think it's a 1A, 1B situation. Props to you, Brandon, for bringing up that Urban Meyer stuff. I think that stuff is really important. It's definitely not been talked about as much as it should. Yeah, it's definitely something important to bring up as well.
But yeah, I'm
yeah. No,
even as a fan, even as a college football fan, I've always felt he's just kind of someone who's gotten away with it without really being brought under the spotlight. So,
and there's so many cases like that in college football too. It's something that isn't talked about as much, but it's certainly something that is unfortunately kind of part of college football's history a bit too much, especially in the recent decades as well. Detroit just made a hire. Expect to hire Dan Campbell, their assistant. Lions tried to get a culture with their previous coach in Matt Patricia. It's simple. They really just need a culture thing. And who knows about Matthew Stafford? There's been rumors there. I know, Brandon, that you've spoke about maybe Matthew Stafford hasn't got much in the tank left in Detroit. Is this hire maybe indicative of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Detroit. I mean, I've said that I could see one of the two. I could see either Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields falling in the draft. Whoever doesn't get taken, one I could see falling. Because I think the Jets either are going to make a trade for a quarterback or are going to just take Penei Sewell.
Which I think they should. I think
which would be the smart move if you're the Jets. You took one great offensive lineman this year, take another great offensive lineman. Boom, you've already made some big strides. I could see one of them falling to to Detroit, but we'll see how likely that is.
Mm-hmm. Shane, your thoughts? Do you feel like with this move, Matthew Stafford could be on his way out?
I hope he leaves, to be honest. I mean, it's like, I've said it for years. I think he's really underappreciated as a player, and I would like to see him go to a place where his talents can actually be well utilized instead of just, losing culture in a depressing place like Detroit. So, yeah. And we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I think with Detroit, they tried a culture thing with Patricia. Maybe Campbell's going to do the same thing. He should do the same thing. But the culture thing kind of ran out of its juice there. So it's a strange one to me. Detroit's a weird job because I don't really know what their goals are long term from a GM perspective, from an ownership perspective. I don't think they do either. And the last year kind of showed it, where it felt like they had some goal-driven stuff the last 2 years, and then this year it really fell. And you want one, you're building a culture. Two, you want progress, right? So one, building culture. Two, you want progress. It wasn't the case here. It's a weird job. Like, Campbell's gonna have a lot on his plate. The final hire is maybe the most interesting one. I saw reports of this hire. Urban was the one we're supposed to get to last, but we kind of transitioned that early. Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Smith, Titans offensive coordinator. This one to me is the most compelling and most interesting hire. I really believe Atlanta should have been a playoff team the last 3 to 4 years. I really feel that way. They were a team that just felt so confusing because how good they can be. And we talked about this even halfway through the year the last few weeks or so as we got to tail end of the season. Like, Atlanta is competitive and they just haven't found the right coach and they've dealt with injuries and stuff. This is what makes Arthur Smith such a unique hire. I'm starting to like it a lot more than I did originally. And it also kind of affirms that Matt Ryan and Julio are staying there, even though the ownership has said that there could potentially be moves there. That doesn't look like that's the case yet, which is an interesting move by ownership there. So, I mean, look, Ryan Tannehill got him back on track. Derrick Henry, of course. I like this hire, but it does make me question, where is Arthur Blank and the rest of the ownership kind of at with both Ryan and Julio with this hire? Because they said a week ago, like, they're good. They said a month ago they think about trading him, and now with this hire, they're good with him. Like, I'm not sure where their head's at.
I think Matt Ryan is nearly done. I think, unfortunately,
in Atlanta or just as a whole,
as a career, I think Matt Ryan just next time you see him next season, look in his eyes when he's on the bench. That is the look of a man who's tired, worn down, done, nearly. I don't think he wins the Super Bowl. I don't think he ever wins the Super Bowl. I don't think he reaches he's past his prime. He's done. Plain and simple. Like, I don't see him,
I mean, yeah, he's definitely past his prime, but I wouldn't say he's done necessarily. I don't know.
I wonder if he's done in Atlanta, but this hire
Maybe.
shows me that he's not.
Well, I feel like if he leaves Atlanta, it's kind of like him saying like I'm
Well, I'm talking about trading because it seems like the
Yeah.
ownership is interested in that. Shane, your overall thoughts on this hire? Because it's definitely an interesting one. It's one that I'm liking more and more, but it's one that I'm also like, all right, what are they actually doing here?
Yeah, I like
long
it.
term?
If I'm being honest, I mean, I felt like an offensive coach is kind of what they needed. And I think that Tennessee has definitely stepped up offensively recently, just with bringing in Ryan Tannehill, a guy that not a lot of us saw too much in, but then clearly they did, and he looks pretty good with them now. So, yeah, I'm curious as to what he will bring to that offense. Still a little concerned about the defense, but we'll see. Yeah,
Defense is a concern, but I think injuries are more for that too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that organizationally they're kind of in a tough spot, and I don't know what a coach will, do about that or won't do about that. So we'll see.
Yeah. And then finally, just locally here, the Seahawks fired Schottenheimer, looking for a new OC. They've interviewed Doug Peterson in the past week. Looks like they're going to interview Anthony Lynn as well. Seahawks are in a weird spot for offensively speaking because I still feel like they need to let Russell throw the ball more and not worry as much about the running game. I don't think they should bring Chris Carson back. I think he's a restricted free agent this offseason. I don't think they should bring him back. What are you guys' overall thoughts on Schottenheimer leaving and sort of where the Seahawks team goes moving forward, especially after a tough loss to the Rams? Brandon, I'll start with you.
I think it's good he's gone. I think him and Pete just did not click. I think Schottenheimer, he's I don't know, he just never worked as an offensive coordinator here. I think I said the Hawks need to play sort of like the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
In that they need to play where they run the ball to throw the ball. Like their main game plan is throw the ball, but they run the ball to set up for Russ to be able to throw the ball. To be able to you're not like running the ball to score, you're running the ball to move the ball down the field, and then bam, you hit him with the right, you hit him with the left with big, deep. It's like you pound the ball, and then you're like, then Russell's like, psych, deep ball to DK, touchdown.
Yeah.
It's like that's the sort of way that the Packers go about things, and I think that's the way that the Seahawks can go about things. I mean, we have more weapons on offense than the Packers have, and yet,
they also should have the ability to go faster as the Packers do.
Yeah.
Shane, what are your thoughts on sort of the progress of this OC search and Schottenheimer parting ways with the team?
Yeah, I was a big proponent of letting Russ throw more and have it be a pass first offense. But I saw this year that unfortunately is just not really sustainable for a team like this. This team definitely does much better offensively when they are more of a run first team.
I disagree with that. I really do.
I don't know. I mean,
because they switched philosophies halfway through the year. The first 6 or 7 weeks of the year, Russell was playing at MVP level. Why? Because they let him throw, and then magically they switch back to what they normally do. And I talked about this halfway through the year. I was like, that's going to screw them over, and it did.
No, I felt like they were still trying to throw a bunch. but it wasn't working. So then they were trying to run more, and then it just, being that it was having running back issues, and then yada yada yada. I mean, like Chris Carson in his last game has only ever had like 8-10 carries, which is that's not a run first kind of thing. It was still definitely very pass heavy. So I don't know. I mean, I think Russell works best when after seeing how they were this year, I think long term, he works best as almost like a gadget guy almost. Like having the run game drive it, but then having him like like Brandon said, come in for third down and throw a deep ball when you're not expecting or whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's interesting. I think Doug Peterson and Anthony Lynn are both strange hires.
You think they would both be strange?
Not strange. Anthony Lynn I don't like. That one doesn't make sense to me. Doug Peterson, maybe. I think he gets a lot of heat for this year.
As he should.
But you got to remember, he did win a Super Bowl there and got to the playoffs a handful of times with the Eagles. So there is that. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're probably the most likely candidates, but we'll see.
There's some others. Doug Peterson, I'm hopeful that not only the Seahawks, but any other team that reaches out to him asks him some really tough questions this offseason because he needs to be vetted more. I'm talking about from a football sense. Last year or this year with the last game of the season, the questionable moves that he made there, he needs to answer to teams as to what that was in a more honest term than what he did to the media. Because that was rough and it was not a good way to end.
I can just imagine Pete being like, so, the fuck were you doing?
No, and honestly, I think that's what happened with Jeffrey Lurie too in that meeting, and then they were like, I don't know if they were both. I don't know what that meeting was like. I want to hear more details as to what that meeting was like between him and Lurie, but I'm that exactly right, Brandon. Like I'm hopeful that teams are like, what the heck was that? And that he is more open about that situation than he would be with the media, because with the media, I kind of get it, but with teams, you cannot do that. You cannot brush it off. And I wonder if that was part of the reason he got fired too. And so he needs to answer for that, and with no matter what team he interviews with, or else I don't think he'll be in the league very long as an OC or anywhere else. I just don't think he'll be in the league long. Because that was shameful, and I'm still upset about it because it's a shameful display, particularly with integrity of the game. And we talked about this before, or did we get to this the first week? I don't think we did, but we got to it a bit. But it was shameful, and if you're gonna hire him as an OC, you have to vet that piece from a football perspective. Of course, I'm talking about from that perspective. But yeah, I think that is. In terms of positional coaches or OCDC, that is the most interesting job other than head coach. The Seahawks OC is going to be the most interesting job because Russell wants input on it. I'm very interested to see how that goes. Of course, the Texans hire now is whatever. That's slim to none at this point. It's probably going to be Eric Bieniemy at the end of the day.
Adam Gase.
But the Seahawks OC hire might even be more interesting than Texans hire, because where the Seahawks do and whoever they bring in, it's going to say a lot about where that team is moving forward.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's pretty much it for the day. Any other sort of final thoughts on divisional weekend? By the way, seriously, Playoff football gives me a lot of energy. You know, it's a long season, 17 weeks. It's long, man. We do shows the whole year and all this stuff, and playoffs just give you an extra set of energy. I bet you guys feel sort of the same way on that.
I really like it, yeah.
Mm.
Especially this year with nothing else going on, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's nice having it to look forward to, but
Yeah. We'll be back next Sunday for Conference Championship Sunday. Take Pro Bowl week off. We need to get into an extensive conversation next week about what the heck is the Pro Bowl and what sort of the future of the Pro Bowl is, especially since they're doing a Pro Bowl celebration thing. They're not actually doing the Pro Bowl. I think we can all agree that this is definitely a year where we need to talk about what the future of the Pro Bowl should look like, but we'll get to that conversation next week, along with who'll make the Super Bowl. We'll take Pro Bowl week off, and we'll be back, I believe, on the Monday after the Super Bowl. We'll record the Monday after the Super Bowl. So that should be super fun. That is our schedule for the rest of the football season, of course. So we'll see you next Sunday night.